Thanks for staying with us. So, the Kwara state government approved the use of hijab in all public schools in the state, meaning that Muslim girls attending Christian missionary schools were to use hijab. This development affected the academic activities of those schools and, most importantly, the students. As of today, the government have asked all 10 missionary schools to close down whilst the hijab issue is being resolved. What are your thoughts on this? How do we move forward? You can call us on 081-270-53687 or 091-390-76948. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag your VTVC so we can read your tweets. So we've discussed hijab issues quite often in the past, and there have been quite a lot of judgments in courts, especially in Lagos State and other states, where this matter has seemed to have been resolved. But in Kwara State, it's a bit peculiar because the issue are with missionary schools, which used to belong to missions. At some time, I think there was a judgment where it was kind of converted over to the government, right? They took over all missionary schools. But at some point, I think it was given back. I'm not sure if it was ever returned back. It was given back to some of these Muslims.
Mission schools, but they do get grants and aid from
the state. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So the question, therefore, is, what are your thoughts on the fact that these schools are refusing to allow the Muslim children wear hijabs, whilst the state is saying they should? And there's a back and forth with Khan and others on this. Let me hear your thoughts before I come to Nima. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so when I read this story, my first thought was, when did we get to this point where we no longer are able to tolerate one another? And the real value of what being Christ-like is for me is ability to accept, tolerate, and love one another. They say you catch a fly better with a sweet than with vinegar. When a church is insisting that someone can't be who they want to be to come to your premise, then it's wrong. I grew up in a CNS church. We had major back and forth at a point because you're supposed to remove your shoe to get into the church auditorium. But there were people that said they want to come for a wedding, they wanted to wear their shoes. And they raised the issue before the wedding day. And the Fakeye then, late Apostle Fakeye, who was our leader then, mentioned that they should be allowed in because we are welcoming people. So they walked into the auditorium with their shoes, and it was a concession that was made as a show of, this is an olive branch to bring you in. I know that there was a part of the story also carried, when the judgment was given, and a Muslim decided to, one of the Muslim ladies decided to wear a veil over her face. That was pushing it too far. But the idea of not allowing them come the way they want to present themselves in church, for me, is wrong. The church should be more welcoming.
The school
should be more welcoming. That's my own opinion.
Yeah. So for me, I do not, I'm very afraid of making conversations like this about pitting one person against the other. So this is not a Christian versus Muslim conversation at all. This is a conversation based on principles, rules, regulations, and the foundation for which something is built, and also respect for what you meet there. So we hear this saying all the time, when in Rome, act as the Romans, and things like that. So I find it almost, when I read it, the word is, Kamana, like you're being mischievous. This is clearly, the first name of the school, Cherubim and Seraphim Schools. Yes, so these are Christian, definitely Christian schools. And it was based on a particular principle, that this and a foundation on which these schools were built. And it has appealed to you, who is not a Christian, to come to that school. So you have not been refused to come and do your, have your education there, but that there's a principle, there's a guiding principle for which this school operates. And it's only respectful that when you get there, you do it according to the way that they do. And if you do not like it, and if it for any reason makes you uncomfortable, it's against your religion, against your faith, or anything that you hold so dear, you are also allowed to willingly leave and go to somewhere that is much more accommodating to you. Because I know, growing up in Jos, there are so many schools, the Ansarudins, the Nuruddins, the Albayans, you cannot go into those schools dressed outside their uniform.
Yeah.
They have their uniform. Even when you're coming to write external exams, you would wear the veil. Yeah. It's a sign of respect.
For that
you
center.
know that this is what the school, these are the rules and regulations for the school. You show respect to that place. And for me, if you show a lack of respect to one, you're asking for a lack of respect to the other. And one thing I want is that respect all other, respect each other. Right. And then when it's not conducive for you, go somewhere where it is.
Okay. Let me now come to Nima on this matter. Your thoughts on this?
I have the inside story being an hijab rights advocate in Nigeria. And one of the things that I would like to say is the history of how schools were recovered. So I went to a Catholic school and we conformed. But when the government saw, conform mean that, I took the Ash Wednesdays, we did not wear the hijab, it was a school, and it had been taken over by government in Lagos State at the time. But we had the nuns still teaching, and they still had the Catholic rituals being done in school. And we conformed. But one of the reasons why government took over most of those schools was this divisiveness. If I didn't go to Our Lady of Lourdes Primary School, I would have had to trek further, even more dangerous terrain, because I was born on the Western Avenue axis, beyond my house as a young girl to school. So my parents had no choice. It wasn't like they had an option. And that's why most of those schools were overtaken by government. In those days, the Ansarudin were a reaction to the missionary schools, giving rules. In Auchi, for instance, you had to have a Christian name. So even the Royal Highness in Auchi has Kevin, which was not part of his birth name. So when you go to those schools, my uncle became Fred, and all of them had to have Christian name to attend the missionary schools within our state. These things continue to divide and widen gaps. So people lost some of the values from their homes. So government thought to regulate religion, take over these schools, make it public, and continue to regulate some of these rules that would discourage education. And in Kwara State, we're talking about 50 schools. Only 10 of them have this problem. 50 schools were, overtaken. In the 70s, out of them, 10 are saying, we want to go back to our roots. We want to go back to the original basis for the creation of this school. And we do not want these girls to now wear the hijab, which wasn't an issue until recently in that state. So they're now saying to the girls, and I don't blame them, because we have this issue. The University of Ibadan International School have been in court with the hijab rights advocates for years now. Right. Because they refuse to enforce the court orders allowing the hijab in their schools. To the extent parents are now, resorting to self-help, fighting, pushing their children into school, such things. The reason why we have our fundamental human rights respected and enshrined in the Constitution is so that we avoid things like this. I cannot, by my disposition, ask you to change your name or dress in a way I like. I just look at you and say, okay, your religion, I don't like it. For you to access this and this and this and this, this is what you do. So government own those schools. They fund those schools. Right, so whether they get grants from outside or not, or that their foundation is Christian-based, does not stop them from being Christian schools. But allow a young girl access education close to home and respect her right to dress in a way that, it's the standard for our public appearance.
So there's an angle to this where people are saying that these are when a government adopts schools, a government that is being proactive should also be able to establish schools that is accepting to his own populace. So yes, you have Muslims amongst you. While you're accepting Christian schools as your own, shouldn't you also create or establish Muslim schools to accommodate your Muslim children? So that's another angle. People are saying that this could have gone to.
There is a court order allowing these children to wear their hijab in the school. There's a court order. It's not a case of these people came to school. If they came to school in hijab, flouting a court order saying they shouldn't wear it, I would not sit here and support it. There is a court order allowing these children access education in the way they prefer to be dressed. And then there is the moral perspective of why are we so hypocritical in the church system? So much that
this is a church, but it's not a school.
No, Mariah, it is a religious battle. It is not.
I don't want it.
No, I don't want. Let's not avoid the elephant in the room. The reason the schools are saying you should not wear hijab is because it was for them. Remove it.
Hang in there. We are on television. It's important that we are careful in our utterances. I'm very, very careful. Let's stick to the conversation on what's going on. We're talking about. I'll come to you. Just hang in there. We're coming to the issue is the government of Kwara State not allowing, I've closed down these schools because of this hijab issue. Yes, we know Khan is involved, but that's not the conversation here.
Let me put the facts out.
No.
The schools, there was an injunction from the court allowing students with hijab come to school to remain.
They can continue education.
See, let me just give the facts. So, the court case you're referring to, I think, is the Lagos one, where already there's one. That's one. But the one in Kwara State, it's saying that there's the court injunction is that maintain status quo, which is, right now, which is not allowing people, the students wear the hijab. So in doing that, this is the statement of the Secretary of, Khan, the religious body expressed sadness about the development, saying that it will use lawful means to reverse the order. And also the statement by the General Secretary, Joseph Daramola, it appears there's a contempt of court because the governor is aware that there is a pending court case on this matter, over which the court had ruled that the status quo be maintained. So is the governor now saying he's above the law? What is going to spoil if we all wait for the court to pronounce judgment on the matter?
All right, let me go on a quick break. When we come back, I'll let you go. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So we have with us the Chief Press Secretary of Kwara State, Mr. Rafiu Ajakaye. Good morning, sir. Are you there?
Good morning. I'm here.
So could you give us an update? Yes, we have in the papers that the state has asked all schools to close down while this is being resolved. Could you give us an idea what's being done currently concerning the hijab?
Well, the government is talking to all the sides to ensure that we have a consensus on the question of hijab. Now, I have followed your programs, and I must say I really enjoyed the conversation so far. To be honest, we are brothers, we are sisters in Kwara State, which is why the government is adopting dialogue. The government is having a dialogue with the Christians and the Muslims to see reasons why we have to stick to the law, why we have to allow the Muslim girl child who wishes to wear the hijab to do so. This will be in conformity with the judgment of the Court of Appeal, and of course, it will also be in conformity with the policy of the government, which was done based on the pronouncement of the Court of Appeal. Now, I must make some clarifications based on your conversation. There are two categories of schools in Kwara State, according to the Kwara State Education Law. We have the private schools, and then we have public schools. We do not have schools that are categorized as missionary schools. Most schools, as we are aware, were taken over in the 70s by the government. In 2013, Christian Association of Nigeria went to court to challenge the status of these schools, that is the ownership. And the court have ruled twice. There was the judgment by the Court of First Instance, which is the High Court of Kwara State. And then there was a judgment by the Appeal Court. In the two instances, the court made it very clear that these schools clearly belong to the government of Kwara State and that they are subject to public policy. Now, we are actually, at this point, not dragging the issue of ownership because it is subject of final judicial adjudication at the Supreme Court. That is clear. However, the question of hijab is another thing entirely, because the judgment is declaratory in nature. I'm glad that some of our sisters on here made reference to the issue in Lagos. The Court of Appeal ruled in the Lagos case, allowing the Muslim girl child who so wishes to wear the hijab. We've had two different court judgments in Kwara State too. Court of Appeal cases in this case, which also upheld the right of the Muslim girl child to wear the hijab. Now, we are not saying everybody must wear the hijab. That's not what we are saying. What we are saying is that if there is one girl who wants to wear the hijab, such a girl should be allowed to use the hijab. We are not saying it is mandatory for everybody to use the hijab. What we are saying is that the court has made a pronouncement in interpreting Section 38 of the Constitution, which has to do with fundamental human rights.
Right.
And it is only for us to stick to that.
Mr. Ajakaye,
but we are not just...
Mr. Ajakaye, therefore, so why do you think Khan is making such a fuss over this issue? Obviously, there's a court judgment, and the state government, there's a law backing this up. So why is Khan making it an issue and insisting that these children shouldn't wear their hijab?
Well, which is why the government is having a conversation with everybody to see reasons why we just have to allow the law to have its way, because we cannot allow anarchy. If we disregard the law, what we may have on our hand is anarchy, and that is not an option. We believe that at the end of the day, everybody will see reasons why we have to stick to the law, why we continue to have healthy conversations amongst ourselves.
Okay, sir. What was the situation until 3 weeks ago when the schools started enforcing no hijab? And what steps did the governor take to abate it? I mean, the committee put in place. How successful has that committee been in this dialogue you're talking about? Are they agreeing? Is there a dialogue at all that remains conflict in Kwara State?
Of course, I can count up to 12 different meetings held at different levels. There were meetings convened by the office of the SSG. There were meetings convened by His Excellency the Deputy Governor. And of course, His Excellency the Governor has held several meetings with different stakeholders, particularly Muslim leaders and Christian leaders in the state, on why the government has to take the position it has taken. The government is not seeing it as a Muslim Christian thing. Rather, the government is looking at it as an issue of fundamental human rights, the issue of respecting norm in the world today, that we should allow any girl who wants to wear the hijab anywhere to do so.
Please, I wanted to ask you, because the paper carried it today, Mariam read it as well, that there is a status quo. Mm-hmm. And that according to Khan is that why don't we just wait for us to have the order? Let the court give us a judgment concerning this case. So would you say, what would you explain is that status quo we are asked to maintain within the schools?
When people have raised this issue on status quo, I'm not a lawyer, but we have the Ministry of Justice here, which comprises very senior lawyers. And what they have said is that when you look at the judgment regarding the hijab, it is declaratory in nature. The government was not settling a dispute as such between two parties. The court was simply stating the position of the Constitution, which means that pronouncement is declaratory in nature. I would like to draw our attention to what happened in the Lagos case. The judgment was given in 2016, and sometimes in 2017, the Lagos State government went back to the appeal court to stay that judgment. And that motion was flatly rejected by the Court of Appeal. And we know that, we know based on that now, we now have hijab being used in Lagos schools. So that judgment, the judgment has to do with interpretation of what the Constitution intends. And so the issue of status quo here, the law today in Nigeria is that any girl child who desires to wear the hijab has the constitutional right to do so. Right. So the status quo is the Court of Appeal judgment regarding the validity of hijab.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir. So when I was in school growing up, I would hear this, that your right stops where my nose starts. So I do agree with the human rights for everyone. And if you are a hijabite, you should wear your hijab wherever you find comfortable. But then there are rules and there are regulations, there are founding principles for different areas. So I just want to give a little background so that you understand where I'm going. When I was growing up, I had friends that would go for Makarantang Allo with. I would look for scarves. Sometimes they'll give me theirs. I would not just appear in Makarantang Allo dressed anyhow. I respected that place. I knew that my friends respected that place, and there was a way to dress, and I showed up there that way. I had friends who were Muslims where sometimes I couldn't go into their homes because of the certain way I was dressed. My friends would meet me outside. And sometimes, because I knew I was going to a certain place, I would dress a certain way to show respect. My question is to be careful in having this conversation, that we do not divide, you know, in pushing this law, that we should look for instead to bring unity and let people understand and respect each other. And in doing that, we have to let them understand that there are rules and guiding principles of a certain place, and there's a respect you show for that place. It will bring people better together. It will foster respect than what where I think we're headed right now.
All right. CPS, did you get that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something about the different categories of schools we have in the state. We have private schools, which have their laws and regulations, and we have public schools. The schools we are talking about here are public schools under the law of Kwara State. And going by the court pronouncement, their status being public means that they are subject to public policy.
Right.
Now, the takeover of schools in the 70s, this clarification must be made. In some part of the country, the takeover was 100%. Government not only took over those schools, but they changed the character of the entire schools, including the names. Now, in states like Kwara State, for the sake of honoring the founding fathers of those schools, government elected to keep the names. The fact that the government kept this name does not in any way translate to ownership of those facilities. At least that is the position of the law today, going by the judgment of the High Court and the judgment of the Court of Appeal. So these facilities we are talking about are being funded 100% by taxpayers.
Right. All right.
The teachers that are in these schools are being paid by the government. So these schools belong to the people of Kwara State as far as the law is concerned.
Right.
Now what we are saying is that let there be tolerance there. Let there be pluralism, which the law allows.
Yes. Okay.
Let us allow any child who desires to wear the to do so, because that is our constitutional right.
All right, thank you very much, CPS. I have to let you go at this point. We'll have to wrap up, but before we go, I'm going to let Nima say something. Because you're a Hijabite and you're a Hijabite rights activist, it's important that I give you this opportunity to say a few words, what you would like to see.
Thank you. So, thankfully, this week is the International Women's Week, and some compromises have been very costly for the Muslim woman. So the issues that women face generally are times 10 what a Muslim woman would face. Those sectors that we complain about, a Muslim woman trying to conform with her religion can't even attempt to or work in certain sectors, and they're in every sphere. We brought Sharifat here, the STEM engineer that, you know, she's now in Canada doing amazing things. But we cannot have, some establishment will not even want to see her until she takes it off, and they don't even accept that she has certain level of intellect because of that. So those compromises that you talked about, Miriam, have cost some people their entire fundamental rights, you know, to grow and flourish, you know, freely and thrive freely in society. Right. And this is what Khan is doing in 2021 by, you know, insisting that this school's status quo was until 3 weeks ago that every child comes to school and gets an education.
I have to wrap up.
No matter what they were wearing.
I have to wrap up, but I mean, I must add that I do go to a school where I have a Muslim in my class and she wears a hijab, and it's a Christian-based school. So I understand these issues are there, but listen, we all have to dialogue and meet a consensus. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we're celebrating women achievers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.